Good evening. On behalf of the Watertown branch of the American Association of University Women and the Watertown Chamber of Commerce, welcome to Candidate Conversations. I'm Joan Schwegel, and I'll be your moderator for tonight. The taping of each 15-minute conversation will be available on Charter Cable Channel 13 and will also be offered to other local access TV stations where appropriate. It will also be available on your computer or on your cell phone at www.watertowntv.com. DVDs will be placed at the Watertown Library and at the Watertown Chamber of Commerce. Okay, without further ado, some general rules that were sent out to the candidates ahead of time. Number one was be respectful of each other's opinions and answers. Keep your responses as concise as possible so each of you can get equal time to speak. If you tend to go over 2 minutes for any one answer, you'll be notified to wrap up quickly. Remember, the conversation taping is only for 15 minutes. Feel free to respond to what your opponent has said. This is, after all, a conversation. You can agree on issues, you can disagree on issues, but leave personal attacks for another time and place. Thank you. Okay, why don't you each tell me something about yourself? Why don't we start with the lady, with Mary? Okay, ladies first. Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Mary Arnold, and I am a fifth-generation Wisconsinite. I was born and raised in Columbus, Wisconsin, and as with many small-town kids, I couldn't wait to get out of town and see the world. I got my BA degree in Madison at the university, and then I moved to California and got a master's degree in social work. Over my career, I have designed and directed and funded programs that have helped adolescent alcohol and drug abusers, pregnant and parenting teenagers, homeless families, troubled families, employee assistance programs, family counseling, and this has been both in the private and the public sector. 5 years ago, my family and I moved back to live in my childhood home, something I never thought I would do, in Columbus, after spending 20 years in Stevens Point, where I worked as a school social worker. I am now serving on the Columbus School Board. I'm in my 4th year. I'm the vice president of the board, and I also volunteer at our local hospital, at our library, and for the VA hospital in Madison. So I think that's my introduction. I'll turn it over to John.
John.
Good evening. I'm State Representative John Jagler. I'm just completing my first term on the Wisconsin legislature. My wife Heidi and I and 3 children have lived here in Watertown for over 20 years. She was born and raised here. Before I joined the legislature 2 years ago, I worked on Assembly Speaker Jeff Fitzgerald's staff as his communications director. And before that, I spent 20 years in the radio industry, the last 16 of which was at News Radio 620 WTMJ. We have an older daughter. She's at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. My youngest is a freshman this year, and in the middle child grades, 17. She's at the high school as well, and look forward to serving as your representative for another 2 years.
Okay. The voting public is not always aware of what the Assembly does for the state of Wisconsin. If you are an incumbent representative, John, that's you, so we'll start with you. What have you accomplished as a representative?
You know, I'm very proud of my first term in the legislature. It's one of those things where I had a tremendous advantage going in because I'd worked in the building before. So where other representatives were finding the bathrooms and stuff, I was already drafting legislation and moving forward. And because of that, I had a nice little head start, and I was able to be the lead author or assistant lead author on 8 bills, ranging from worker safety to some of our work on revamping the Wisconsin mental health system, to work on the heroin epidemic, and items like that. In addition to that, individual bills, which were approved with a bipartisan vote on all of them. I also, of course, was one of the people who approved the budget, which balanced budget, which not only cut taxes on income taxes, it cut property taxes. We froze UW tuition. We put more money into into education, public school education, and accomplished a great deal when it comes to worker training and things like that, of getting people back to work and being more qualified to find a better job in the workplace.
Okay, thank you. Mary, how would you like to answer that? If you have not held the office yet, what would you like to accomplish for the state of Wisconsin if you're elected?
Well, first of all, I do want to thank John for some of the efforts he's made. I was, particularly impressed with your work regarding the heroin epidemic, which, is just a terrible blight on communities, and some of the other bills that you've introduced for the good of Wisconsin. I appreciate your efforts. Unlike John, I'm a little obsessive. So I wrote out all my answers and brought them with me. So I would say that one of the things that makes me appreciate Wisconsin is that I have lived outside of the state over my lifetime for a total of about 20 years. So there are many things about this state that I think I maybe appreciate that I might not had I not had the opportunity to live elsewhere. We were the first state one of the first states to give women the right to vote, which was less than 100 years ago. We were a leader in doing away with unfair labor practices. Gaylord Nelson, our former governor, who was so instrumental in environmental issues and started Earth Day. And of course, our state was settled by Germans, who not only brought beer, brewing, which we're all happy about, but a strong tradition of public education, universal free public education. So those are all things, the environment and public education that I, and certainly rights for all, that I would work for. I am concerned and have heard concerns when I knock on doors in neighborhoods all over the district about our economy lagging behind those of our Midwestern neighbors. If you read the papers, you know that recently they've talked about how we are going to be having a projected possible structural deficit that's quite a bit larger than we had anticipated. There may be a shortfall in the budget coming up in the next 2 years, which may mean more cuts to education, to local governments, and I think we can do better in those areas, and those are certainly some things that I would work on as your representative.
Thank you. There's been a lot of bitterness and mean-spirited partisanship in the state of Wisconsin, as well as in Washington, D.C. If you're elected as your district's representative, what is one thing you can personally do to help heal the rift between the parties?
Do you mind if I answer that one first?
No,
so
you
I
go.
told John when I came in here tonight, I was going to have.
Actually, I was going to have you do it
Oh,
first
go ahead.
because he had the
we're
first
gonna
last
reverse
time.
it.
Yeah,
Well, it works out fine then.
Okay.
John and I ran against each other 2 years ago. I think we had a very friendly campaign. Mm-hmm. We tried to be positive. We were amiable. I still remember the first time I ever saw John. It was on the street when I was getting signatures for my nomination papers. He walked by, and he had this very friendly smile, and he said, "Well, hello." And I said, "Hi, John, I'm Mary." So it was, it was a nice beginning, and it stayed that way throughout the campaign. Mm-hmm. And not everybody can say that. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very true that there's been a lot of conflict, and it doesnn't have to be that way. Back in the Ronald Reagan days, when he was our Republican president, he was very good friends with Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill, and they would socialize together, and reportedly said that part of the reason they got so much done was because they spent time together as friends, in the off hours. Russ Feingold, our Democratic state senator, and Republican Senator John McCain, another example of two men really liked each other, worked together, found common ground. I think we can do that. I think there is this attitude that, though, on both sides, that you're not supposed to spend time with people in the other party, you're not supposed to get along, you're not supposed to be friends, you're not supposed to have common ground. This is an issue that I hear about when I knock on doors from just about everyone. So I think that what we should do in the legislature, we should have bipartisan parties to maybe cheer on the Packers. Let's all dress in green and gold, get together, have a few beers, sit down on TV, drink some Wisconsin beer, and cheer for the Packers. I mean, who doesn't like the Packers? You're a Packer fan, right?
Absolutely. One of the things that I'm most proud of in this last session is working across the aisle. The very first thing, coming from being at the Capitol as a staffer when the Capitol was under siege and full of the Capitol chaos, was I was there for it, and I knew the damage that was being caused, and my goal was to try to heal that in the best way I know how, and that's just meeting and talking with people. And the very first thing that we started doing as a group of freshmen, both freshmen Republicans and freshman Democrats, we had our orientation together, and we made fast friends that way. Some of my best friends in the building are the freshmen that I came in with on the Democratic side. And with that relationship, we started a brown bag event where we would bring our bags into the speaker's office and have just a brown bag lunch and discussion. But what that also did was get the relationship moving on legislation. And you know, when Representative Diane Hesselbein from the Middleton area had a bill that she wanted to be working on, for instance, it's hard to be in the minority and get legislation passed. You have to have help on the other side of the aisle, on the majority side of the aisle. I was one of the people that she came to on different bills. And because of that, reaching back on our mental health, there was a bipartisan mental health task force that was formed with Democrats and Republicans serving equally. Their amendments, their ideas were incorporated into our bills. All of the bills that I introduced in the legislature that were approved with unanimous votes. And that's how it gets done, is by working across the aisle, taking their ideas. There's no Wisconsin, you know, it's a Wisconsin idea, it's not a Republican idea or a Democratic idea. And there's wounds that are being healed over the last 4 years in the legislature, and proof of that is in the final vote total of the bill signed into law by Governor Walker last year. This number just astonishes people when I talk to them. 96% of them had Democratic votes. 96%. So it's not all the bickering that's going on. There is good work being done on both sides of the aisle together.
That's so good to hear. Thank you very much, both of you. Excellent answers. John, you'll start this time. Education in the state of Wisconsin is one of the top priorities, as it takes a sizable amount of the budget. There's been some controversy about Common Core. While the precepts of improving math, science, and English and improving our comparison status with other countries are desirable, there seems to be growing unrest about the implementation of curriculum and testing. What is your opinion of Common Core, and how would you vote on this issue?
I was one of the authors, or sponsors rather, of a bill to repeal Common Core in Wisconsin and to get Wisconsin standards. And it's not so much the standards themselves that are drawing so much attention. It's the implementation, how they were implemented, and what has happened since then. And I agree with others who say we don't need a cookie cutter federal government standard on education. We should be able to design our own standards. And for this issue, for those people who feel most passionate about this, I tell them that they need to go and start at the local level, because any school district can opt out of Common Core right now. Others have done it, and if some viewers are, this is their, you know, believe me, for many, this is their number one issue. If it is, start at the local level and talk there. But I have grave concerns over a cookie cutter type approach, although I do think the standards themselves are better than we had before.
Okay. Mary?
Well, I think it's good. It's good to remember that Common Core is a product of a collaboration between Republican and Democratic governors going back to the 1990s, as well as corporate leaders who wanted to have uniform, high standards that were addressed in all school districts across the country. And these standards do not dictate curriculum, but rather are a system to set benchmarks so that we know how kids are learning in English and math and other topics. The aim really is higher standards and uniform standards. So if you're going to school in Arkansas, the kids, and you move to North Dakota, you know, the kids are all learning the same kinds of things. It does not dictate, I repeat, does not dictate curriculum. 45 states have adopted Common Core standards. School districts across Wisconsin, including the one where I sit on the school board, have been working for 4 years on implementing Common Core standards at, you know, quite a considerable taxpayer expense. If we were to undo them, this would waste millions of taxpayer dollars. And there is one state, I think it's Indiana, where they did opt out of Common Core. They developed their own standards, and guess what? They're very, very similar to what the Common Core standards are that we are now working on implementing in Wisconsin. In March, there was a hearing at the Capitol, and superintendents and school board members from all over the state, 300 people or more, came to testify in favor of Common Core standards for the reasons that I have given. And Governor Walker himself was in favor of Common Core in 2010. My concern is that this has become a bit of a political issue, and it's to the detriment of school boards and taxpayers and kids. So I believe we should continue on with them.
Do you have anything more you can add?
You know, you mentioned the Arkansas standards. I just think whether we review them and they come out great, that would be fine. The implementation of them was very troublesome for many people in the legislature, and I understand that the superintendent is a constitutional office, and that's the way we have it, and that's quite honestly why repealing them makes it very difficult. But I think we should be able to look at our own standards and do better. I personally don't know if I want to have the same educational standards as kids in Arkansas, as the example that you mentioned. I don't know that. I think we can do better.
It would be nationwide. And John, you have to agree that at this hearing, when all these school board members and superintendents did come to testify, there were very, very, very few who testified in favor of dismantling Common Core.
But a lot of those superintendents also came, and if you talk to them in private, they say, yes, I'm against dismantling Common Core because what you just mentioned, the time that we've spent and how much money it's going to cost.
Taxpayer money.
But then they go, but you know what? This really isn't working. It really isn't what we thought it would be. Some teachers say it really isn't what they thought it would be. They think it is changing education in a way that's negatively hurting kids.
You know, I think you bring up a good issue there, which is probably the testing aspect. And I think there are teachers who feel that there is way too much emphasis on testing, and it takes away from classroom time that could really be spent on more creative kinds of topics. And that is one thing that I am hearing from teachers. The one disagreement they have with Common Core is the emphasis on testing. Again, I believe these are, this is something that can be worked on. It's a work in progress. Dismantling it and starting over because of the expense involved, I believe would just be a poor fiscal move, especially considering, the amount of money that has been cut from school districts from their budgets over the last few years. This is really an issue for districts.
The only budget I ever voted for increased funding for education, though. I'll say that. To a tune of $250 per pupil. So yes, there were cuts to education in years past, offset by Act 10, and I don't know, we don't have enough time in 15 minutes to walk down the Act 10 road.
Okay, all right, if you have anything else, that's a good one. I'm glad to have heard your different opinions on it. There have been some states that have opted out. I'm curious why. I think we'll find out more as we go along. Thank you. The definition of the word marriage has been raised in a number of states. If the issue of defining marriage comes up before the legislature this coming session, how would you define marriage and how would you vote? I think it's Mary's turn.
Is it my turn?
I think it's your turn to start, yes.
Okay. Well, I define marriage as a legal contract between two adult, unrelated human beings who want to express their love and commitment to each other. Our state constitution was amended in 2006 to specify that marriage can only be legally exist between one man and one woman. In the 8 years since then, I think we have seen attitudes not only in Wisconsin but across the country shift remarkably, especially among young people. And a majority of Wisconsinites now support same-sex marriage. In June, Judge Barbara Crabb struck down the Wisconsin constitutional ban against gay marriage. This was upheld by a 3-judge panel in the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, and they upheld that decision to strike down the constitutional ban. Federal Judge Richard Posner, who was appointed by Republican President Ronald Reagan, wrote in no uncertain terms that using tradition as a reason to discriminate against same-sex couples or against anyone for that matter is unacceptable. And I agree that discrimination against same-sex couples is wrong.
We're running close to being out of time. I'm going to give you an answer.
I can answer really quick.
Okay.
Joan, you asked if this is going to come before the legislature. It's not going to. The fact of the matter is you asked my opinion on it. My opinion doesn't matter. The courts have already decided that The legislature, which did the most drastic thing it could by presenting a constitutional amendment, presented it. It was approved by 2 separate sessions of the legislature. It went to voters. Voters approved it, and the courts have made our opinions irrelevant. So it's a pretty simple question, but it doesn't matter. It'll be decided by those outside of either Mary or I.
Okay. I think we need to skip to the last question. This is, why should the voters vote for you in November? Johnny gets to start.
Thank you. I think we need to keep the momentum that we have going, and I'm proud of the session that we've had. I can talk about the tax cuts and some of the bills that we've passed, but one of the things I'm most proud of is the constituent service. Some of the things that people call with problems with state agencies, or some of the communities, quite frankly, that call for some of the state help, and they're getting jammed up on some of the red tape and they need a little push through. That's the kind of stuff that I really enjoy doing. One of the things that you see right across the street is the Globe apartment building, which was done with a state collaborative effort where they needed some help to get this a reality, to get some housing for low-income families in Wisconsin and for those who are disabled and want to live by themselves for the first time. That wouldn't have gotten done without a push in the legislature, and I look forward to continuing to do that and serving as your representative for another 2 years.
Thank you. Mary?
Well, I do believe that we can be doing better in Wisconsin, and I will promise my constituents that you will be the most important people to me in the 37th Assembly District. I will listen to your concerns and meet your needs as best I can. I think, as John says, there is a lot of constituent service involved in being an assembly person, and with my background in social work, that's something I've spent years and years doing, and I love doing it. I also love Wisconsin. We have a long tradition of political transparency and fairness, which I really appreciate, especially after living in some other places. And we have also a tradition of extending a helping hand to other people and providing opportunities. I do believe we need a more robust economy. I think the key to prosperity is having a healthy, well-educated, well-trained workforce. So I will work to support our great public education system, which is one of the best in the country, our universities, our tech schools. I'll make sure that our natural resources are protected. They bring in billions of dollars to our state every year, that we have affordable health care for everyone, that we make sure that cities and communities have local control, and that we put Wisconsin back on a stable, long-term path to economic growth.
I think we're out of time, but
thank you so much.
Thank you both. I thought they were excellent, right? Great. Okay, thank you and good night. Don't forget to vote on November 4th. Tuesday, November 4th.
And thank you.